the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Sakach, and we have Tullio Siragusa and Ash Maher with us again. Today we are going to dive into the customer journey. As I mentioned in the last show, the customer journey can be quite simple, like your car is on the side of the road and you need a tow right now. So you're going to pick up your phone and you're going to take care of it right then and there. Very short, simple start of the customer journey for that tow truck company, acquiring you as a customer. Sometimes, though, the customer journey is quite complex. I sat in a Google meeting where we discussed the 800 or so touch points in the process that it took you to buy that car. So 800 touch points along the customer journey for this bigger ticket purchase, which of course you may now be regretting because your car is getting towed, which is also part of the customer journey. So if you're a small business owner or you're working in a small company, this may be new territory for you. If you have some marketing background, it's probably something you're pretty familiar with, but we're going to talk about some nuances you may not have heard before. In fact, if you listen in till the end today, because we're going to talk about this in a different way, you're going to hear something you probably never heard before. So the customer journey, it's really one of the more basic exercises that in empathy that companies go through. You're putting yourselves in the shoes of the customer. And before they even become a customer, and often well after, the customer journey is kind of this simple exercise in emotional intelligence that most companies are trying to take on. Ash, so in that regard, when you are taking on a new client, one of the first things you're trying to figure out are the customer personas you are working with, right? Who are you trying to reach?
Absolutely. So, the customer avatar, or as I said, customer persona is probably the most important part of the marketing journey. You start there by really understanding at the deepest level who your customer is. And, traditionally in traditional marketing, we went as deep as understanding what television shows these people watch, what books they're into, what are their biggest pain points, what are their goals and objectives. And really, we would create characters out of these individuals. And once we have that persona, then we're able to create the whole journey of what does this individual go through from point A, or the awareness stage, as they say, to point, Z, right? Which is the loyalty. How do we turn that person to a brand ambassador, right? But it all starts with that deep understanding of the customer. But when we talk about tradition, I think we really cusp the surface of the customer persona. And I know there's design thinking involved. And I really want to hear what Tullio has to say about how we could take this to another level. Because I don't think anyone cares about magazines and when it comes to targeting your audiences and what they listen to, but understanding at a deeper level, what are their pain points? I think that's really telling there.
Yeah, and that's the key. There's the traditional way of doing it, which will help you understand how to have a transaction with the customer. And that's good. That'll probably get you some customers. And then there's the creating the experience that makes the customer want to stay with you and continue to work with you because they feel like they belong to something. I have to go back and give the example of like Steve Jobs, who's masterful in design thinking. When you think of the Mac, when it first came out, it wasn't nearly as good as the PC. In fact, I would dare say it was probably subpar in terms of its capacity. But what did he do? He created this culture that if you're one of the cool kids or the creative kids, you use the Mac. Even if you couldn't cut and paste easy, you had to do 3 different steps because you were part of this culture of the creative. You use the Mac. So he connected at a very emotional, visceral level with individuals that wanted to be part of a creative community and succeeded at this to the point where you would buy a product that was subpar in terms of its technical capabilities to the PC because you wanted to be part of the creative community. Now, today, fast forward, it's the #1 personal computer in the world. But when it first started, it was started based on the sense of community. And that's the whole point. Stage 1, it really comes down to curiosity. There's 5 stages to design thinking. I like to think of it as 7. I add curiosity before the first stage, which is really to empathize. The second stage is defining the state that the user's in or the problem. Third is to ideate, which is where you challenge your assumption and you start creating some ideas around how to solve them. Four is prototyping. This is actually where you start to create a solution that you're going to test in the marketplace. And then 5 is testing your solutions out. I like to add an element of curiosity up front, and then a stage 7, which is really continuous improvement. So in the curiosity stage is, how do I help someone see themselves as a customer or as a user? And to do that, you have to empathize. And that ties into all the typical traditional research you would do, understanding that psychographic information, geographic information, all that stuff is very valid. But it goes a step further. It actually engages with users. It interviews users. It asks them what experiences they would prefer to have. It doesn't go into with a thought process or an idea already defined and validates it. That's unfortunately the way many brands do it. They'll come up with an idea based on experience. Let's go validate it. This is a step beyond validation. This is actually, let's define what we're trying to solve, right? So it's understanding the deeper visceral experience. The best way I can describe it is, if you need surgery and you're trying to determine where to get that surgery, what hospital to get the surgery in, or what doctor to use. And you can do your research and you'll find all the technical skills check, for a particular hospital, but it's very clinical in the experience. It has all the technical requirements. That's going to be a good place. They can take care of my surgery. Or there's the hospital who's taking the time to understand that you're not the only one on this journey of the surgery. Your whole family is on this journey with the surgery, and your friends, and everybody's worried and nervous and scared. And there's a lot of feelings that come up from this process of getting the surgery. And they have all the technical skills, but they go a step further. They sympathize and empathize with not only your need, but your family, and they'll say something like, here, we know how hard this is on everyone, including your family. We want to make sure that you and your family feel good about the experience you have with us. I'm just making this up very simply, right? But that creates a different kind of experience. One is, I get the transaction taken care of, checklist, they have all the skills. The other one is, they have all the skills, but they also understand my needs as a human being. I am scared, and they get that. And so is my family, and they get that. Guess who you're going to end up doing business with? It's not hard to figure that out, right? The person who gets you. So the first stage is empathizing to the point where you get the end user at a very emotional level, not just the transactional requirement.
Yeah. So like what Ash is talking about, we're building this sort of customer profile, this persona, this avatar, and maybe we've got data on this demographics and psychographics and all that stuff. But Tullio is also saying, and then we want to, let's talk with them. Let's really get inside their heads and understand beyond that, because I'm not going to have a demographic of fear, right? Coming to, a hospital or something. There's no data on just that particular characteristic. So it's taking it a little bit of a step deeper by empathizing, asking questions, getting inside the heads of those people versus just staring at the data, right? So then you build this kind of more holistic customer persona. And so from there, let's dive into the customer journey now. So to me, in advertising, the customer journey it's always about winning these moments, particular moments. So the first stage of this journey is what's commonly referred to as the awareness stage. This has also been called the 0 moment of truth as well. This is when someone's researching, online, before making the buying decision. It can include looking at reviews, comparing products, maybe seeking recommendations on social media, that kind of thing. There's actually a stage, you could break this up into like a pre-awareness stage if you want, which is, taking it a little bit more detailed, where it's like the customers haven't really even thought about the need or the solution yet, but they're exposed to some brand messaging or some word of mouth recommendation. So like in the car scenario, maybe I'm watching a TV show and then I see this car on there, you know, they got the product placement in there and I'm, oh, wow, that's a nice car. And I haven't even been thinking about purchasing a car. Well, now I've just been sort of exposed in this almost pre-awareness stage there. I think thinking about cars too, I forget what the details are, but Mercedes-Benz has a ridiculous outlook on how long this pre-awareness and awareness stage is, something like a couple decades, because right they know, you know, that's an expensive purchase, and you may need to get to a certain stage in life before you get there, but they're thinking so far ahead on this. It's a very long-term view. Another example in this awareness stage might be like a blog or you know, even a podcast or something where maybe you're talking about different topics and you're going to have a course or a book or something down the line, right? That's sort of this pre-awareness. Nike, just do it, right? They're not selling sneakers at that moment. They're selling this, they're being the champion of human spirit and identifying their brand with that name. They're not particularly focusing on one particular sneaker. They're just focusing on this sort of thought around their brand. So I think, you know, when we think of this awareness stage, Ash, what kind of thoughts come to your mind here?
Well, this is the stage you're saying hi to someone who has never met you before. So when you determine who your customer persona is going to be, and you take an empathetic approach to really understanding what's going on in the shoes of this customer, well, the first stage is, how do I go ahead and introduce myself to this person, right? And traditional marketing is, you know, you create a brand video. Now, a brand video that really talks about, you know, who you are as a business, how you may potentially solve a pain point, and so on and so forth. And that's the traditional approach. Now, when you have to take a design thinking approach that Tullio's about to speak on, I think you can take that to a whole other level. And I kind of like calling this stage the empathy stage, right? Because even though the empathy you're understanding, in your awareness of introducing yourself, you're also bringing awareness to the empathy you have for the user by introducing, hey, I understand you. Hi, my name is business, right? And I would love to hear Tullio's take on this one.
Well, this is the whole thing about empathy is, and that was a perfect example about Mercedes, because they create cars that should last forever. I mean, their mindset is, you buy a Mercedes, it's going to last forever. So their buyers are different than those who maybe want the high quality up front, who trade in their car every 3 years. So it's not just understanding what the user wants, it's understanding what role you're going to play long term with that user and the type of user or the type of buyer you want to do business with. So it extends not just to customers, it extends to the entire culture of the organization. You know, if you can help customers see themselves as a customer, then you also need to make sure you help your employees see themselves as a customer. You help your investors see themselves as a customer. So it goes a lot deeper, and it's across the entire organization in terms of a mindset. So what you were just talking about is really sort of like what's called the define stage in design thinking, which is really this idea of falling in love with the problem. Don't fall in love with the user, fall in love with the problem. Once you fall in love with the problem, then you are passionate about solving it. And you'll find those who are equally passionate about having it solved. And you'll hire the people who are equally passionate about solving it. And then from there, you can start to ideate, okay, how do we go about solving this problem? We're very passionate about it, and ideas will flow. And from those ideas, then you can prototype this idea of creating this video, right? You prototype some of these ideas and you start to create solutions. And those could be in advertising, could be some storytelling, some visual ideas, where you begin to share that passion for solving the problem with the customers who are equally passionate about having it solved. Yeah. And as you understand your end user, you begin to understand your own company as well and the kind of people you want to hire. Because going back to Steve Jobs, he created a community, right? Yeah. And that's the whole point. You can advertise to the masses, or you can create a community of the kind of buyer that will stick with your brand forever. You know, people buy Mercedes because they want a car to last forever, et cetera. I had a 13-year-old Mercedes that still looked brand new. Unfortunately, it was totaled not too long ago. I miss it, but that's
Sorry for bringing that up to
Getting us
give you some PTSD
Well,
there.
Yeah, I ended up switching to an electric since then. But the point is, so my desires have sort of changed a little bit, but I still want something that lasts long term. So the point is, the more you understand the problem, the more you fall in love with it, the more you can align your ideas, your prototypes to solving it, because it's coming from a place of passion, and that's tied to emotions. And so ultimately, you want to resonate with people who are also tied to the same desire to solve the problem.
Yeah,
I think a lot of times in the marketing space, you feel like this awareness stage is like for bigger budgets, like, big companies, they can afford to build this awareness stage traffic coming into their funnel. With a smaller business, you're really concerned sometimes about what's this next stage, which is the consideration stage. And so it's closer to the sale. So you're really focused on things closer to the sale. But even small businesses, you can play with that awareness stage too, especially if you've got a really small niche. You really need to figure out your whole journey there from the awareness stage to this next stage. So the consideration stage, for moving on here in the customer journey, this is really what was called the first moment of truth by Procter and Gamble, way back when. They didn't anticipate the internet coming along and having this moment before that first moment of truth. So this is like, when you're at your first interaction with the product or something. It could be on the shelf, way back in the day. It would just be, you're about to decide which product to choose there. So this is this sort of first moment of truth. This includes, example might be, I like this example. It's Warby Parker's home try-on for glasses, right? So this campaign is where they'll send you different pairs of glasses to your home, and now you get to actually have them in your hand, try them on. So it's like this first sort of real moment with the glasses. They also have this app where you can actually just sort of put them on, virtually. But again, they're showing you their product, and now they're showing you how you look in it, how it feels to you, and you get this this experience with them. So, and they're getting really close to that real moment of truth of, well, am I going to purchase or not, right? So right now I've got these glasses in my hands, I've got them on my face, I'm really playing with them, but the moment of truth of the purchase hasn't happened yet. I'm still right there. So for car shopping, again, this is like, yeah, you visited the websites, you've watched the videos, you discussed it with your family and friends, but maybe you're taking it for a test drive now. You still haven't committed yet, but you're getting close you're in this consideration stage. And as I mentioned, there's like 800 touch points on these bigger ticket items like that. It's ridiculous. And it's like, I remember seeing that and I'm like, how the heck do I handle this? 800 touch points. And the first thought to me that came to mind was, well, remarketing. Like I can follow this person along their journey by, showing them different ads or carrying my story through this remarketing where, they've already they've had that first touch with me. And now I'm going to kind of have a conversation with them as I'm going through this journey to pushing them through to this consideration stage. So Ash, what are your thoughts on this consideration stage?
The consideration stage is the moment the business has been introduced to you. Now they're at the stage where Google calls it the favorability stage, right? Why is this business better than? Why should the customer pick you over the competition, right? That's they're considering you as a business. So going to your point of they're picking a product and deciding which one should I pick, what is the best asset to use in those situations? Well, traditionally, testimonials and reviews have always been the best favorability asset because it tells you, okay, well, so-and-so is talking about this product or this product is being heavily reviewed well. So now if I'm thinking and deciding, I may decide based on reviews. But if that's the only buffer we have for consideration, I think there's a deeper approach there when we bring in a design thinking approach where, okay, I think it's bigger than why should we pick you over the competition? Does this business understand my needs better than the competition? I think that's a design. And that too, I would love to hear your feedback on that too. I think really going deeper into consideration, if you're going to consider, does this person or this company or this brand understand my needs better than the competition? I think that's a more deeper approach to consideration. But from a traditional, how do we get the person to buy in to your brand? I think at that point.
Yeah. And I think that's the mindset difference. In design thinking, you're actually continuously testing. You're putting out a prototype that you're testing to see how people respond. And then you're continuously iterating and starting the loop all over, right? Because each client or each user adds another element, another experience, another emotion. And so you have to continuously feed into, how does this fit into the problem we're solving?
And by prototype, Tullio, you're talking like about like an ad story, right? That's the prototype
absolutely.
on this stage, not like this physical so much.
I mean, in the space of marketing, yes, an ad story is a visual display of various storytelling elements. These are all great ways, but the mindset has to be more that we're prototyping and testing. You never actually ever solve the problem. You're constantly looking to solve the problem. And as you do that, you get better and better at it. And then eventually those customers, they see you as the value-added player who can solve the problem for them. But they're not going to do business with you because you're solving the problem. They do business with you because they feel like that you understand them and their need for solving the problem at an emotional level, right? It's like the person who is looking for a job. What do they really need? Is it the job? Or is it to take care of their family, to take care of the ailing mother or the autistic child? I mean, there's all these other things going on. That's really what's driving the individual. There's all these emotional attachments that's driving the individual. The job is just a vehicle to get to the end goal, right? So it's as you stay open to testing and prototyping and reiterating, you learn more. And as you learn more, you can feed the stories and fine tune them and attach to the emotions more and more, to the point where it starts to become, second nature to you, because you are, again, falling in love with the problem, passionate about solving it, and passionate about the people you're solving it for. And so that resonates, we just intrinsically as human beings will resonate with something that feels like, wow, they really care about me.
And I think that's why people.
I was going to say it's.
You go. Yeah.
Passion.
I was going to say it's not just, back to your original point on personas, it's not just one customer journey here, right? You can have multiple different people with these, hey, this person's going to come to this business with this perspective. This other person has an entirely different perspective. This other person has a whole nother perspective. And so it's very nuanced when you start breaking about this. It's generally not one size fits all. It's, you've got to have some nuance, and you can start pulling that apart really at this stage. And, like Tullio said, by asking these questions, and with Ash, he'll be like looking at the data. What's the data say? But then we've got to go back and ask new questions for each of these different personas. Go ahead, Ash. Sorry for.
Oh, no problem. And yeah, to that point, it's relatability, right? And you're testing what is connecting to that user base the best way. So we're trying to find relatability, and the best way to do that is to test different iterations to figure out what are the pain points. And it goes back to the top of understanding that person. And then once they're there, does that person connect and relate and say, oh my goodness, they do understand my problem? And even when you talk about reviews, the people that are their customer base understand the problem. They've helped these individuals as well. And I feel like I could relate to this. So I think there's a relatability attached to that stage. And once the customer feels that, okay, no, these people do understand the problem, and there's other people like me who this business has solved their problem, they're now ready to move on or transcend to that next step.
So let's talk about.
I was going to add, this ties into beautifully in this idea of Bliss, that we've talked about, building love into scalable system, because that's really what it's about. It's a build process, it's continuous. So if you do it right, you keep learning, you keep iterating, you keep building more love into it. Empathy and love are very interchangeable. And that's the ultimate goal, is to continue to stay open to continuing to make improvements.
Yeah, and if you've got that sort of Bliss approach, you've already brought kind of your purpose from the beginning, and it's threaded through this. They're going to see some of that higher meaning if you're doing it right, as you're going through the awareness stage, as you're going through this consideration stage. They're feeling what you're about, right? You're like a authentic, real company. They've got that. Now they're going to see, do you walk the walk, right? So now they're going to get to that purchase stage. And so this is, for a lot of people, it can swing such different directions here. And I've seen it with, two different sites in the same niche, where one's just very smooth and one's got some roadblocks, and one's going to convert very high and one's just going to struggle. But, I think of Amazon. When you think of a smooth sale process, you've got that, early on, if you followed Amazon, you saw some of the iterations they took, but they got there pretty quickly as far as how can we make this, super easy. Is there like this one-click checkout, free shipping, getting rid of some of the pain points. There's a Jeff Bezos quote of, "We see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little better." So think about that. Well, on the opposite side of things, think about that car you bought. Typically, what an awful, awful experience that is. I mean, is there a worse experience? I'm not sure, for purchasing a product. And, this may be going to the dealer and you're dealing with a car salesperson and you're negotiating, and, maybe they're suddenly throwing things at you with different purchase price. And then even if when you agree upon it, it's like, okay, I've got miles of stacks of paper to go through and all that. So you've got these two different customer journeys there, and you see people trying to disrupt the car purchase process because they know it's so painful, and they're, coming up with ideas for that. But you can think about Amazon with that simple, smooth one click, or you can think about, Tullio having to get his new car and going to battle up with a salesperson and just dreading this process, possibly because you already know how bad it's been previously. So this is part of the customer journey. What do you guys thought on those two opposed viewpoints there on?
Well, it kind of blows my mind how many times I'll speak to a brand about they're maybe launching a new product or some other version of it, and I'll ask them, "So how many people have you spoken to about this?" And get their opinion or thoughts on it. And they're like, "Oh no, we haven't spoken to anyone. We just seen the need in the marketplace, imperial data, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Well, why not speak to people and see what they have to say about it? Like, wouldn't that make sense before you go and invest all this money to launch something that might miss the mark? Go talk to people."
And you can have this
to that.
You can have a really great product, but if it's just so hard to get through that purchase stage, how are you going to even experience it? I mean, so
Right.
You do have to like sit someone down. Hey, here's the process. What do you think about this process to get you as a customer? Right. So it's like simple or a total pain in the ass.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's fun to do. It's not complicated stuff, but there's a bit of a resistance to do it, almost as if I might discover that my ideas were not spot on. So there's a little bit of like fear of I could be wrong, and that's a little bit tied to ego. But the beautiful thing about this, you've got to create a culture and an environment where experimentation and testing and failing is okay to get to the right outcome and the right solution. But you don't do it through trial and error like most companies do, which costs a lot of money and costs jobs. You do it in a way that's systematic, strategic, and it's fun. You get to talk to people before they buy something from you. You learn from them, and they learn from you. And before you know it, you got something that's a winning combination. It takes a little effort, but it definitely requires some investment in, emotional capital. That's really what's required.
And I want to clarify for the audience, the purchasing stage is the conversion stage. So the first two stages we discussed was really around building that brand trust and how can you get people to buy into your brand. But once they're bought in, what is going to be the ask? And what are the impediments during that purchasing stage as well? And as Tullio mentioned, it could be, brands just not wanting to speak to their customers. I know I ran into a situation where I need to get a hold of a brand. If I deal with an automation and they cut out the human element, I hang up the phone. I don't deal with it anymore, right? I would prefer to talk to someone. But that's one example. When you talk about traditional marketing from a digital side and advertising, this is the stage where you're talking about your offers and testing different offers. Is your offers hitting? Is your ask hitting? And are you asking it appropriately? Did you really build that relationship with the customer that you're asking, right? And if you don't get that part right, then yeah, there's a challenge. And it's not just from the average, it's all of it together. It's like, what are the impediments? And a lot of times, like you said, it's the emotional capital that people don't want to invest. And that's where the revenue ends up getting missed out on, that extra connection, that ask,
I have another. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go for it. Your turn.
I have a great example of this, even in sales. In the IT services space, for example, the software space, there are a lot of companies competing in that space. And it's easy to go talk to a VP of engineering or even a CTO and talk about all your capabilities. And most of them do. This is what we can do. This is all of our experience, all the use cases, white papers, you name it. Everybody's pounding their chest how awesome they are. And at the end of the day, the CTO is sitting there and like, okay, I've looked at 5 different vendors. They all sound the same. They all have the similar capability. And they'll be like, okay, maybe I can save some dollars, right? What's missing there is, why did that CTO even go to you to begin with? Maybe they couldn't find the right talent to do this on their own. Maybe they couldn't find the right level of budget to do this on their own. So they're already showing up somewhat defeated because they're not really getting what they wanted, which was to be able to hire a committed, dedicated, loyal employee they can count on. So now they got to go to a third party to help them. So if you as a business don't empathetically understand that they already are not getting what they really wanted to begin with, you're losing from the get-go, right? But the vendor understands, like, you know what? I can never replicate the experience you would have by hiring a dedicated, loyal, committed employee. And I know how hard it is to find them. The market is difficult and they're expensive. So what I'm going to do is try to replicate that experience as closely as possible. It's never going to be the same experience, but I'm going to try to replicate that experience for you. And now your 5 different vendors, who do you think they're going to do business with? That company really understood what I wanted to begin with. I didn't want to do business with them. I wanted a dedicated, loyal, committed employee that I can hire. So I get a team that replicates this experience for me. I'm going to go do business with them. So going even in a B2B concept, because a lot of people will question, can you do empathy on a B2B? It's really B2C, right? Even in a B2B concept, because we're all people, you can still go a deeper level and understand what is the underlying need here? What's triggered this need? What's the problem you're solving? The problem is I'm trying to find dedicated, committed, loyal employees. The solution may not come through a hire, might come through a third party who understands how to solve that problem better. So the empathy comes into play. And I always used to say to the sales teams, empathy will always win, because if you're apples to apples, the company that has the highest empathy, that resonates best with the client, that makes them feel like they're understood, they're going to win every time.
So, yeah, now we've got that. If you had that empathetic approach and you're going through this and they're like, this is the right client. I mean, this is the right company I'm going to work with. And now I've made that purchase. I've gone through that purchase. Now let's talk a little bit about that walking the walk part, where, hey, yeah, we've brought you through maybe this empathetic process. We've told you this is who we are. And now this next stage of our customer journey is this experience stage. So it's like, are you really backing it up? So this is also called the second moment of truth. And so this happens after the customer goes through that purchase process. Their experiences here, it's like, am I going to be satisfied? Am I going to be happy? Maybe I'll be surprised and delighted in some way that brings me, like, whoa, you guys are kind of going above and beyond. You've got this first experience, the first impression of the actual product or service that you're selling. This is a huge point. The sale is not just, it's not just over now. If you're a marketer, you're focused on, yep, I got the conversion, on to the next conversion. But really now it's like, okay, what's happening after that? So it might be, this person's going to leave a review for you at some point, or for the car, like we mentioned, if your car breaks down and needs a tow, this is a really bad experience. And so, on the other side of that, it could be maybe your car had some features that saved you from a bad accident or something, so there's a really positive experience. Whatever that experience is, I think, Tullio, you mentioned Steve Jobs earlier. There's a quote from him. It's, you got to start with the customer experience and work back toward the technology, not the other way around.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that, Tullio?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, organizationally, it has to align as well. This is one of the reasons I always say, really, the CMO's job is not just to market externally. His or her job is to create a community and a culture, both internally and externally to the organization. And
Can we
alignment.
pause and can you just say that one more time, please? Can you just say that one more time?
The CMO's job is not just owning the external communication and marketing and community or customer base. It's also owning the internal culture that supports that customer base. So they have to be a cadre and a champion for making sure that organizationally there's alignment, right? So if you're going to have empathy in the marketplace for customers, you got to have it for employees as well. So you got to design with the same mindset how you're structured internally with empathy in mind, because empathy always wins. So how do I create an environment where my employees are motivated to serve this mission of solving this problem? And so there has to be alignment all around. Otherwise, in that second moment of truth, the failure happens. And when that failure happens, that leaves a really bad taste in customers' mouths and they don't come back. So that is so critically important to have both alignment externally and internally on how you go about it.
What's interesting about that? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick. I mean, that first impression, it's just so hard to recover from sometimes. It takes you 10 times the work to recover from that first impression. Go for it, Ash.
I have two examples. Back in the day, it was maybe early 2020 when every marketing guru in town had a Facebook course that they were selling. And the moment they took that, you bought their course and they took your money from their hands. There wasn't one time where I had a great experience after the fact. It was like, oh, wait, this wasn't exactly what I thought was going to happen, right? And that really killed me, right? I was like, oh, gosh, I got scammed left and right. Because once they got my money, for whatever reason, they didn't focus on that element, which was the customer support and making sure that the person who just bought from you is being nurtured along the way, right? Now, the second example where I really felt that was more a recent example, where me getting into a car accident. And knowing that when I purchased all of these solutions to help me, that after I purchased them, I had that support after the fact. And everyone bought in to that empathy towards my situation. So, I had an example where I needed to know if I had gap insurance on my vehicle in case, my vehicle was a loss. And I was able to contact Norman Reeves Honda as an example, where they were just there, empathized with me, walked me through my challenges, asked me what happened. Oh, by the way, you do have gap and you're going to be just fine. But that whole experience is why, when I get a choice, if my car was told and I get a new car, I'm going to go through that experience. They weren't like, hey, you bought from us, go deal with it now. And I find that some brands don't care about that experience after the fact. I love my car. I love the support that was attached to my vehicle. And when something bad happened, they were there for me. Now I'm ready for the next stage of this journey.
Yeah. And I think talking about that next stage, so you've got that good feeling. So this next stage in the customer journey, it's this loyalty and advocacy stage. It's the post-purchase engagement. So now this is really what they also call the third moment of truth. This is really the ultimate moment of truth. This is the stage where the customer's use leads to this deeper brand loyalty, to active advocacy. And this is what we really want. They're going to share their experiences through the word of mouth, through social media, reviews, testimonials, and influence other customers. That'll push them into that zero moment of truth again, right? So we come back full circle almost here. This is what, like, that ultimate stage you want in marketing, is to hit this sweet spot where you're hitting the expectations, you're surpassing the expectations. There's a Walt Disney quote. It's, do what you do so well that they will want to see it again and bring back their friends. Right? I mean, that's just That's right on the point of this stage. There's another quote by Peter Drucker. The purpose of business is to create a customer who creates customers. I don't know if that's the purpose of business, but I do agree. The purpose of your marketing ultimately should be to create customers who create customers. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Absolutely agree. And it comes back to this idea of community. If you build with the mindset of creating a community, then that community supports itself. And it's not difficult to do. It just takes a little bit of effort and emotional capital to get it done.
And you get those brands like, Harley Davidson or Mustang or something, where people are wearing the swag, they're wearing the shirts, they're all in, they're going to some meetups, like you said, communities, they're invited to special events, and they're very enthused and they love this brand so much. Ash,
great example of owning so many different motorcycle brands. Nothing feels like a Harley Davidson. I can't describe it. You have to ride it. You have to be part of the community to get it. I've had Ducatis, you name it. It's a perfect example. That is by design. They have designed that way to do that.
Yeah, they switched what they were doing years back to really thinking about that community. That was like very important to them. There's a Simon Sinek quote that's, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. So like Harley Davidson, you kind of know their why in that brand and everything. Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
You know what's interesting about that when we talk about community? Have you ever met those individuals that take pride in their network? Hey, I have a guy, or I have a company that I could recommend, right? Because they had such a great experience. I almost feel like these brand ambassadors take pride in their community, right? And be able to share that community with their friends and families. So I feel that way. I think it's odd. I just had that moment. I thought about it. Wait, how do I feel typically when I'm at that stage, when I'm ready to refer out because I just had an awesome experience, or I have an awesome experience with the brand, product, service, and so on? I take pride in it. I'm excited to say, oh my gosh, Dave, you need this to meet my guy, Dan, who does this and that. And that is so powerful. Even when Tullio was bringing the Harley Davidson community, that's a great point. Once you ride a Harley Davidson, that experience, that feeling, you take pride in your community and you want to tell other people about the community. Maybe people who haven't been introduced to Harley Davidsons in the past, but they want to feel alive. And you're like, hey, well, come join my friends, and come check out this awesome motorcycle that made me feel so happy. So I think there's a sense of pride is attached to when you make someone's experience really great. Yeah.
And I think that pride, there's the other side of it where they've gone through this bad experience previously a lot of times. Yeah. It's like, they can compare and contrast. It's like, no, I hired this plumber and this plumber and that was horrible, but this guy is really, a great plumber and I had a great experience. I highly recommend him. So it's this comparison to these other failed experiences for people to this good experience. And if you're very authentic and genuine in your experience, even if hey, I had a bad day, I screwed up or something, I messed up. If you stay true to, being real in that, they're going to give you some leeway too on that. You can get yourself some leeway just by being, a good person. And
you could own like a segment, Triumph, for example, they are well known for adventure travelers, right? Those cafe radio, those adventure travelers. So they own that space, so you don't have to own the entire category of something, but just find the community that gets excited, that you're excited to solve their problem too, and keep doing the best job at solving what they want than anybody else.
Yep. So I teased about this a little bit at the beginning, but now that we've kind of gone through that customer journey and that process, I want to just flip it a little bit to your internal marketing or your internal processes, right? If you're in a company and you're trying to get buy-in on something, you have to go through the same sort of process, right? You need to build awareness of that there's a problem, right? There's a pain point somewhere. You need to get consideration and buy-in from your staff, from your vendors, whatever the problem is. And then you have people experiencing this, right? They're going to inform their opinions on whatever this new process is or whatever you're trying to get bought in. And they're going to give you feedback and stuff like that until you fine tune it. And then hopefully you get to that That's almost like the post buy-in stage, right? Where they've got engagement and loyalty and they're advocates for this because they're part of that process. So I think you can take this and just flip it and look at your internal marketing. Look at whatever your internal process is that you want to fix. Like we always talk about this, building love into scalable systems. You really are going to go through a process like this where you can't just throw something at people and expect it to stick. Sure, if you're command and control, this is what's going to happen, right? And I'm talking about don't lead like a child, lead like an adult here. Know that people are going to go through this process. Be empathetic no matter what it is. What are you guys' thoughts on flipping the customer journey inward onto whatever you're trying to get buy-in for in your own company?
Well, I can go on for days on that one. I mean, that's all of it, really. I would dare say that if you do that right internally, it'll extend to how you treat the external markets as well. I would say flip it around. If you focus more on how you run your business organizationally with tremendous empathy, then it becomes very natural to get everyone to be in that mindset, and a lot of innovation comes out of that because your employees are also the users, and they're going to give you the best feedback if the culture aligns with welcoming that and there's enough vulnerability and openness and safety to do that kind of open feedback. So a lot can come out of that will benefit the brand overall, for sure.
And Tullio, it goes back to that point you made about the CMO too, right? Like when you've got to work on your internal team or your internal process, your products and your services, so that what you're selling is actually what you're selling, and it goes above and beyond with the experience and all that. So this is a tool for CMOs, I think, is you're familiar with this process of customer journey. Flip it on what you need
the employee
for
journey.
Your company. Yeah.
I think this is the forefront, and you have to imagine before the digital age, the first brand touch point was a customer driving by your business randomly when they got off a highway. This is maybe been even before billboards existed, right? Customer sees your business and they walk in. That first experience they have is what they're going to remember forever. And then from there, I think word of mouth, the concept in word of mouth marketing became the whole crux of everything, right? The idea that word of mouth marketing is the powerful source of advertiser marketing. And when you look back from the 80s to the 90s and so on, that's what it was. Give your customers an amazing experience. So we're talking about these different stages. If your internal processes are all bought in, and when someone walks into your business, the marketing is matching the internal processes, that's just a recipe for success right there. And I think from there today, with the power of technology, social media, the advertising capabilities we have, what we couldn't do back in the day, we're now able to do on steroids, I believe, right? So if we could get that word of mouth where we have to wait for a customer to walk into our door today, we get that word of mouth at scale. And I think that's why it's so important.
And you're also going to be held accountable at a much higher level.
100%. I do want to share a dire warning to businesses on the audience. We're talking about emotions here. And we're trying to explain how people may be compelled to become your ambassadors when they're happy. But I'll tell you this. The percentage of them when they're angry of taking action towards your business and saying something bad about you is way higher than them willing to say something nice about you. So if you don't get it right, you could bet they're going to, go ahead and leave you a not nice review.
Yeah. You really have to think like the concept of the village, right? Everybody knew each other. Everybody bought, if you did bad business, the entire village knew you were done, right?
Leave town.
But you did great business, the entire village knew. So as a brand, you can't think anonymously, well, there's millions of people out there. No, think like a village. Every person there matters. Their opinion matters. And if you take the time to treat it that way, you're going to hold yourself accountable as well, because that's the other element of this too. It does require tremendous self-accountability. And at the end of the day, we're all in the people-to-people business. Stop thinking B2B, B2C, B2B to C, D2C. We're in the people-to-people business. People buying from people doing business with people. So if we bring that human element, the emotional element, the empathy element, the love element into it, then it will resonate on a very personal level. And that's how you get clients to stick with you. And that's how you create a great journey that makes you successful.
So let's recap real quick here. So we talked briefly about getting a feel for who your customers are. Can you come up with a customer persona? Can you take a real empathetic approach to that? Dive in deeper beyond just the demographics and psychographics in there. Then we talked about the awareness stage, where it also starts with pre-awareness, but you're giving that first experience with your brand. Moving on, you go to that consideration stage. Can I speak to their pains, their needs, and provide a solution that makes sense? And then you got the purchase stage. Don't overlook this, a simple process or something excruciating like going to the car dealership. That affects all your marketing. And then you got the experience stage. What's the brand experience? Are you creating a happy customer likely to repeat, right? And if then, can they become this advocate for your business? That's really the ultimate moment of truth in all of this, is trying to get to that point where they become this advocate. And then, maybe you get it, if you're fortunate enough, like a Harley Davidson or something, where you're really focusing on it, you get this great community that comes from all that. And then I also mentioned, turn this inward. If you're the CMO and you're trying to fix problems, you've got a whole process for buy-in right here. You've got all those stages, and your staff is going to be going through all those stages when you want to get buy-in for something, a process or something that'll change the business. Make this empathetic approach work for you. So on the next show, our journey takes us to the jungles of conscious capitalism. In our previous discussions, we've kind of been at the riverbanks. We haven't got off the boat yet. It's time to let's just get off the boat and just jump right in there and explore this topic in a little more depth. What is it? What is it not? What are the economics of empathy in business? Ignorance in this case is not bliss. So join us on our journey as we continue to the next Bliss Business Podcast.